Welcome to the VC React podcast. Every week, we bring you insights and reactions from top VCs reacting to weekly news on startups, VC funds, and investment rounds. In today's episode, we will talk about the new global Web3 and crypto fund out of Abu Dhabi, the new surge in DeFi in MENA with 3 stories about DeFi startups and projects. We will also talk about the new financing options for startups in MENA, such as revenue-based financing, invoice factoring, and many more, and how a Pakistani company is going to offer this and more to e-commerce companies in Saudi. And lastly, we will end with a conversation on loyalty cards and cashbacks in Saudi, and why Resal was able to raise $9 million Series A to focus on just that. We have a great episode for you today with 2 young and amazing VCs. Arnav Danthi, principal at Nuwa Capital, and Fatima Abdulla, associate at Plug and Play Tech Center. In the video description, you can find more details on our guests, their LinkedIn profiles, and links to their companies' websites. Our weekly news are brought to you by FWDstart, MENA's top news aggregator that sends you MENA startup and VC news twice a week. And as always, from FWDstart, we have my co-host, Jamie. What's happening this week, Jamie?
Good morning, Ahmad, from sunny Abu Dhabi for a change. This week we're going back to 2021. AI is dead, Web3 is back, baby. So forget about AI. It's all about Web3. So
that's a flashback.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going back. It's a pandemic. We're all stuck inside. Web3 is where it's at. It's all crypto. It's all blockchain. AI, never heard of it. But yeah, look, we've had a number of stories, I think, over the course of the last 2 weeks, especially in the Web3 crypto space regionally. It's kind of been a summer of kind of crypto related Web3 news. I mean, we had obviously Bitoace's acquisition by CoinDCX. We were only discussing last week, July, in terms of the Web3 funding there, Sentient Labs, there was a couple of others. So there definitely does seem to be something of a re-emergence as far as the Web3 crypto side of things. Not that it ever went away on one level, but in terms of what we're going to focus on this week, as you mentioned in the intro there, Gate Ventures in Abu Dhabi, they've launched a 100 million global Web3 fund. So that's Gate Ventures. They're the VC arm of Gate.io. They're a crypto exchange based, actually originally founded in China, I believe. I think they were the first back in 2013. They obviously have a VC arm based in Singapore. They've raised, this will be their 3rd fund. I think they've had 2 funds to date. The first focused on early stage investments. First was $100 million fund. Then back in 22, they were raising a $200 million fund. So that's Gate Ventures. In terms of then the blockchain center in Abu Dhabi, they've teamed up with. So the blockchain center that was only launched 3 weeks ago, I believe officially. So they're moving pretty quick. I did notice back when that announcement was made that they did have sort of a place on their site dedicated to VC investments coming soon. Came a bit sooner than I anticipated, only a 3-week gap between announcement to that. So in terms of, I guess, the focus of this particular fund, it seems like it's pretty geographically indiscriminate. So they mentioned in the press release that they're going to be looking at the Middle East, but also the US and other markets such as Asia too. So it's an interesting development. So we might maybe focus on this first, and then we can look at some of the other developments as far as, you know, Tether is going to be a name that's going to be appearing a couple of times, but let's take this first.
And maybe before we get into Web3 and crypto, in previous episodes, we discussed how most government mandated funds tend to focus on investing in their countries or region. However, this fund is taking a bold step towards investing globally. How significant is this for MENA-based funds? I'm really happy to see a MENA-based fund investing globally or with a global mandate, not a country or a regional mandate. What do we think of this?
Yeah, maybe I'll start. Inherently, in our opinion, crypto VC and traditional VC are a little bit different. You also need a little bit of a different skill set. The liquidity timeline is also quite different as well. If you look at the traditional VCs that are in the region, and you look at the LP profiles that are government or semi-government, a lot of them are building or funding startups in the region for the region, focused on the UAE or Saudi or whichever country it may be. Whereas if you look at some of the crypto VCs or some of the government programs for crypto VCs, a lot of them are global based, both regionally and globally. I think the inherent difference here is that the UAE majority wants Dubai and Abu Dhabi to be crypto hubs. And to do that, you need to incentivize the best talent to come here, right? They want crypto to be, the headquarters for crypto to be in the UAE. And to do that, you have to increase the TAM, right? You can't just allow the best talent to come here for a relatively small region. You need to open up the entire kind of world to them. So, you have crypto hubs such as Singapore, Hong Kong, the US to some extent, and now Dubai is this transitional hub for crypto. A lot of Indian crypto companies have moved here recently as well. And they want this to be, let's call it the global HQ. So you really need to incentivize people to come here and allow them to invest the way they want to. So the global play for crypto is also inherent, right? Crypto is a global product in the way it operates. A lot of the team that works on crypto is remote as well. So you need to follow the footsteps of the industry if you want the local industry to flourish and become the headquarters, in my opinion.
Investing in crypto companies or Web3 companies in specific are a bit different than the typical investment and startups. It's not direct equity in many cases. You invest in the cryptocurrency of the company and you wait until this currency appreciates in value. Equity sometimes is irrelevant in Web3 companies. Do you see MENA region investors investing in this business model?
That's a great question. And look, LP appetite is something that I don't fully know, but we've dabbled in it at Nuwa, and we've spoken to some of our LPs. We've given primers about crypto, when crypto in 2021 or 2020 was super hot. Everyone was kind of speaking about the space. And I feel there was a lot of appetite to learn more rather than deploy straight away from the traditional LPs that exist in the MENA region. I think we've gotten to the point now, as you mentioned, there's been a cycle or two since then. There's definitely appetite. Where I think it's a little bit different is that, us traditional VCs, we have, it's super easy for us because, to be super frank with you, we find a great founder. Of course, that's very difficult. And we invest in a company and we have maybe 7 to 8 years for that company to exit. But in that time period, of course, you can follow on, but most of the work is quote unquote done from our end. Of course, there's value add. There are things we can do in the interim to help the company succeed, but we're not really thinking about each position on a daily basis, right? It's not a liquid market per se. Whereas, as you mentioned, in crypto, not only are you taking equity, but most of the time you're taking these tokens, and these tokens are changing in value every day, like a stock. So I think it's actually a little bit harder for crypto. Yes, most of these tokens are vested, but you also have a liquid position to think about on a daily basis. So I think there's a lot of pros for LPs, the fact that it's more liquid, the fact that you can exit positions quicker, but it's also technology that's relatively new and LPs need to understand inherently. That's why I think a lot of the regional LP capital for crypto has gone internationally to funds that know the space really well versus the regional VCs. But you do have some regional VCs now. I believe Shuruk Partners is a great example of this, that are dabbling in crypto in the region. So I think as the technology expands, as there are more real use cases for the technology, you'll traditionally just see more LP appetite coming to the table for this type of product.
Yeah, and Fatima, in Plug and Play, have you ever considered investing in crypto companies, blockchain companies, or Web3 companies over the past few years?
Right now in UAE market, if you see the blockchain startups and Web3 startups, it's growing and there has been a lot of investment. But as of now, from our side, because we are still trying to look more into them, but we are actively investing in Saudi Arabia startups. So we are definitely looking. We have had 2 startups that we have, explored in the past, and we're keeping a close eye. So yeah, we are in the process, but as of now, nothing has been closed. But we are also trying to see, because in Saudi Arabia, they're still trying to, build this policies and everything, how it's going in Abu Dhabi. Like Abu Dhabi Hub 31 has partnered up last year with FAB Bank and, for regulating the startups and, also attract more startups. That has definitely put up a lot of attention. But in Saudi Arabia, it's just growing. So we are just closely monitoring them and hoping to see more startups so that we can actually invest in something that we really see potential in.
Yeah, I was looking into more startups in the Middle East region for Web3 and blockchain and crypto in general. I was looking for a list of VCs or VC firms who are dedicated for crypto or Web3 or blockchain in general. And I found this list. In here, if you scroll down, you can find many companies actually in Dubai. There's Dubai, some in Abu Dhabi, New Tribe. This is Dubai as well. Let me actually just show you. If I search for Abu Dhabi, for example, you can find Shisha Finance. You can find, of course, Mubadala, Hub 71 as well. They hosted some crypto companies. But if you also look at Dubai, Web3 native investors, New Tribe, Woodstock, Cypher Capital, Sharding Capital, Cryptomeria Capital, First Stage Labs, a lot. And of course, the other projects and other VC firms, traditional VC firms that also invested in crypto, like Beko Capital and Mubadala and Hub 71 and others. So there's a lot of VCs who would invest in crypto and Web3 companies. But I was also looking at startups in the Middle East region. And I got a list in Dubai again. Dubai keeps coming up. 41 Web3 companies and startups in Dubai. And this is in August 2024. And the list is, keeps going, 41 companies. And then I was looking at a list of the crypto exchanges in the Middle East region. Of course, we know BitOasis was acquired maybe a month ago. eToro, we have CoinMENA, is very active and backed by Beko Capital as well. And there's a lot of exchanges. So there is a big scene of crypto in MENA. I just want your reactions to this scene.
I think what's a little bit funny, thinking through it now, is that if you look at the list of crypto investors in MENA, and then if you look at the list of, let's call it traditional VCs in MENA that we all know and we love, there's almost two ecosystems living side by side when these ecosystems don't really interact with one another, right? And that's quite interesting because like post-COVID, you almost saw, because of COVID, a lot of the industry moved, the crypto industry moved to Dubai, but I don't think we fully integrated with them. I'm talking from the traditional VC perspective, nor I don't think have they integrated with us. And it's almost these two kind of different ecosystems living side by side. And over the next couple of years, as we see more, founders moving to the region, either building regionally or globally, and I think globally more, I think these ecosystems will somehow get closer and closer and merge, right? We have, for example, you mentioned Beko Capital has done a few, VC investments. In my time at WAMDA and some of the other VCs, they've done, let's say, crypto exchange investments with the three that you mentioned. But have, most of the regional VCs really gone and backed, let's say, layer 1 or layer 2 solutions, infrastructure, DeFi? Not really. But I really do think over the next 3-4 years, as Dubai emerges as a hub, naturally, we will start investing in those companies. And I think one thing that's not really spoken about enough also in the VC space now is that because Dubai and Riyadh and UAE and Saudi is now attracting such great talent, most of our funds, we have regional mandates of where we have to invest. It's amazing because it opens up a new realm of possibilities of us investing in UAE companies or Saudi companies that are building globally. And our TAM of companies to fund also increases massively. And, inherently, sometimes they're even higher quality companies because the market size is inherently bigger when you're building for the world. In fact, the last 2-3 deals that we've done at Nuwa have been UAE-based companies that are building globally. So it's opened up this massive pool of talent that we're able to fund where we couldn't before. So I think that's great for the regional VC landscape.
Something that I have noticed when I talk to the startups who are from Web3 and blockchain is that they speak about how they find it difficult to have, obviously, like we are attracting a lot of good quality of individuals to the region, but definitely they have challenges in terms of finding good talent in this technology. Something that I have noticed startups saying that they really, really struggle with, like they train them and then they find something better and then they move. So this is like just one of the challenge which the startups have mentioned to me.
Yeah, especially if you're building layer 1 or layer 2 solutions, it's really hard to find the talent in the Middle East region. But I think we're getting there. We're getting there with all these companies. Like we have 41 companies in Dubai alone. I'm sure they were able to attract talent. And hey, we live in a global world already, and you can hire people remotely. They work from home. They work from wherever they live. They don't have to move to your own city to be able to work on this. And as you mentioned, Arnav, in the beginning, crypto is a different beast, right? You have to adapt to what the crypto industry standards are right now. Before we move on to the next story, I want to talk a little bit about Gate Ventures. It seems to be a good partner for Abu Dhabi. It's basically from Gate. Gate is a crypto exchange, Gate.io, but then they created Gate Ventures. They seem really good in their insights. I read this one this morning. It's their outlook on the crypto innovations in 2024. They included a lot of details here, some are technical, some are business innovations. They're talking about the new innovations and layer one development, the parallel EVMs. It's very, very interesting. And I would encourage any VC who's interested in this space to read their outlook here and maybe expand later on other insights. And I would encourage every VC, generalist VC, or even if you are a VC in the fintech industry, especially in MENA, I think you should dabble a little bit in crypto or in Web3, in DeFi, especially in DeFi, because I think DeFi could be the future of fintech. And we're known here in the MENA region with our focus on fintech. So I would encourage everyone to go and read this. Jamie, what else do you have for us?
Yeah, to that point, following on from there, maybe we can take a quick look at Kem, the Kuwait-based fintech. They've teamed up with Tether, or more so, they've received a $3 million investment from them. That brings the total they've raised now up to $4.5 million. Founded back in 2021, Kem is a peer-to-peer instant payment platform. So it allows you to send money using a quick QR code. So forgoes the need to generate payment links or use traditional accounts. Reminds me a lot of Revolut, actually, in a sort of UK context, in terms of that interoperability and making it so much easier. That's one of the things that's frustrated me so much living in the region, is the difficulty in transferring money, like especially just from an Irish context. I mean, Revolut, although it's expanded its range of services now to encompass much more than exclusively just being able to transfer money between people, that's really what, kind of swept the country, as it were. And it was like, if you didn't have Revolut, then you couldn't send money. So it's one of those things where I think that's nearly evident in certain respect from the way Kem seems to be approaching things, purely from a landing page, how they're presenting themselves. It very much does seem as if it's a younger demographic that they're targeting. I think this is a sort of interesting development in that I think it's Tether's potentially their first investment in a startup in the region. For those unfamiliar with Tether as well, so it's the world's largest stable coin. So it's a dollar peg token. You might be familiar with USDT. So it's designed to maintain a value of $1. I think they have nearly $117 billion in circulation, which takes up the bulk of the stable coin market globally. And in terms of this collaboration, then essentially it's going to introduce USDT on the Kem app. So the idea being that you can then use that as a currency that you can transfer. I think currently maybe it's only the Kuwaiti dinar which is available on it, but GCC expansion is obviously on the cards, and USDT is something that they're looking to introduce into the fold.
Since we're talking about Tether, can we also talk about the next story for Tether, because they're interested in the UAE as well?
They are. The CEO, Paolo, he's a busy man at the moment. I mean, and they've had a terrific H1 as well. I mean, I think their operating profit is something like 4.2 billion, I think, in like in the first half of the year alone.
Well, okay.
But they're introducing, they want to introduce a launch of stablecoin that's going to be pegged to the Dirham in the UAE, which is, I think, is a super interesting development. So they have done this in other markets, I think, as well. Obviously, the US dollar being the primary one, but I think they've done something similar as well. I can't remember now off the top of my mind. Maybe someone else have a better idea in terms of the other currencies that they've done that with, but it's something that they are active in doing. So it's going to be an interesting development. I do think, currencies obviously are quite stable in the region for the most part, in terms of being like, I mean, the Kuwaiti dinar, for example, I think it's nearly one of the most stable currencies in the entire world, and that, it's not exclusively pegged to just the US dollar. It's a sort of basket of currencies, but nonetheless, it's pretty cool.
So they invested in the Kuwaiti payment company, but they're interested in creating a stable coin for the Emirati dirham. Why not focus on Kuwait? Or why did they invest in the Kuwaiti company? Any ideas, any reactions?
I think also, first of all, like Tether and stablecoins in general, I think it's an amazing business, right? Where interest rates are right now and they make money on the float. It's an amazing business to be in at the moment, as I think Jamie mentioned. Look, I don't know how you guys think about stablecoins. I personally feel it's probably the best iteration of crypto today, or the best kind of use case to come out of crypto. It's honestly amazing. It's transparent, it's fast, it's cheap. This region for stablecoins, it also makes a lot of sense, right? Like, we're one of the biggest regions for remittances globally. And a lot of people are still today using, old school systems like the Hawala system or just Western Union. And these take a period of time, they're costly, and it's not very trusted as well, right? So if you bring stablecoins / instant transfers to the region, it's a big plus for Tether. So from their perspective, I totally get it, right? You want that transaction flow, a piece of it at least, and that could be billions of dollars. In terms of the second piece with the dirham, look, the UAE wants to be a trading hub, right? So the more kind of different ways to offer payment methods you offer, especially ones that have really fast settlement, the more trade there will be. So I think in all cases, this region for stablecoins makes a lot of sense. But that being said, Jamie, I think you mentioned as well that like this region is notoriously a little bit more stable because we're mostly pegged. Maybe adoption takes a little bit more time because you're not really worried about kind of shifts in currency. With that being said, the flows in and out of the region are so vast that stablecoins make a lot of sense personally for me in this region.
Do you think that would affect, or would the government interfere with this? Because I remember 2 or 3 years ago, Dubai or Abu Dhabi announced that they are going to create a stablecoin for their own currency. But I did not follow the news after that. I don't know what happened there. But this is a foreign company that's coming to create a stablecoin inside the country. Is there any fears by regulators in there?
I'm not sure. That's the honest answer. I mean, when you're doing trading partners with various countries around the world, the currency that you settle in is extremely important, right? We've seen a trend of countries now moving away from the US dollar to reduce dependence on it, right? I mean, you have BRICS now that want to settle in, the different currencies within BRICS as well. So I think everyone's trying to reduce a little bit of dependence on the dollar, diversify a little bit more. I mean, there's a question if it's a USD stablecoin, are you really doing that? In terms of within the GCC or within countries now, all of them are kind of launching real-time payment system as well, like India did and did really well. So it's a question of what do they think is the most important, right? And macro is a big part of this. So I do think that they will launch some stablecoin mechanisms internationally. I think regionally it'll be their real-time payment systems. But it's definitely contingent on politics and different things.
Fatima, any comments, reactions to this?
Arnav has really covered a lot. I would say in terms of how a lot of countries are trying to move from USD at this point of time and trying to have their own currency and some different stable currencies, especially for Middle East as well. We are also trying to move. So I definitely think that the shift and having CAM itself would really be definitely it's going to impact and be very useful in this region specifically, where again we have different global companies here and also the startups that's also trying to enter from global at this point of time. So yes, definitely I definitely see them doing well in this region.
Maybe the one thing question is just generally, we see a lot of announcements on crypto, such as the ones that we've seen today where Tether invests in a company that's doing payments. But at the end of the day, this is just kind of a back-end transfer of capital. The way you're moving capital is different, and it doesn't underlyingly change what the business is, which is either a remittance pay or a peer-to-peer play. Do you see, I'm just curious whether you think, does the consumer need to even know? I mean, is this, that it's crypto on the back end? Because at the end of the day, maybe not telling the consumer that, and you just having faster settlement within your own kind of operations is enough. Just curious to get your thoughts on that. Because a lot of the announcements for crypto is, oh, this is a brand new thing, but in reality, it's not a brand new thing. It's just something on the back end that's a little bit different. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I love that. This takes us to the conversation on what technology do you use behind the new innovation or service or product that you're offering to your customers. I would ask the same thing on AI, crypto, or any other technology. Does the consumer need to know what is the underlying technology you're using to give them their service? Honestly, I don't know. I think consumers, they want to associate with innovative brands. So that would be on the side of, yes, they should know. Right. They want to use newer technologies. And if you come with a system that says, hey, we're new, we're innovative, we're faster, we're cheaper, we're providing you with a cutting edge technology, we're doing everything we can to serve you as the customer or client. I think on that side, I would say yes, they should know. On the other hand, I can say the counter argument would be not necessarily. They want to get the job done no matter what. Just give me the best thing you can and give me, for me, I'm transferring money, for example. I want the money to go from point A to point B with the cheapest cut or fee. and the most trusted partner, right? And I don't want to have any hassle in converting the currency to a local currency. I want immediate access to that transfer. So yeah, there's pros and cons to each side of it. What do you think, Jamie, Fatima?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's one of those things where I think most ordinary people don't care. I really think they don't. I think it's a small subset of people who, you know, and if anything, I think given, recent scandals in the space, whether it be related to FTX, I think there's maybe, a hesitancy sometimes. I think the more sort of, Web3 is sort of, provided prominence in terms of the marketing and, how you're presenting it, you kind of go, well, do I trust this on one level? And look, that's unfair. Absolutely, for the most part. Look, I mean, a couple of bad eggs doesn't, mean that the entire thing should be painted in the same light. But I think, ultimately, I think most people will not care if it does the job that it's supposed to do, whatever sort of infrastructure, is underneath that to accomplish it. I think great. Like it's just one of those things where I think maybe there's an element of a bubble as it relates to it, and people kind of get caught up in it. But I think the reality is, for your regular person on the street, I don't think they could care less if it means that chemist transactions are going to be more seamless, and you said it, things are settled more quickly. Great. I don't think anyone is going to care that Tether is involved in the show, personally.
Yeah, I think the same in terms of adoption, right? So when they see the job is done, eventually they really don't care. Like as far as the job is done, even like what happens is as far as it's done, it's seamless and everything, it works. Eventually, I feel the consumers do start accepting and adopting to it, and they start trusting the technology. So it's just a matter of time.
Okay, our last story about crypto before we move on to another industry.
Yeah, this is the last story I'm doing on this space. I'm not doing this again, Ahmed, for another month at least. I need a break. I don't care what happens next week, no matter what it is. If they launch their own stablecoin, I'm not covering it. I'm sorry to God, I'm sick of reading about this. So Mithu, so they're a Saudi-based loyalty platform aggregator, so focused on restaurants and cafes. They've secured 500K from pre-seed funding from Adaverse, so they're pretty prominent global Web3 venture builder. So I guess this is partially kind of what we were speaking about there on one level, and that it's one of those examples whereby it's a loyalty program management, gamified app, address challenges of expired points and the low adoption and the like, but it's one of those things where I guess the end user, again, probably doesn't really care that that's crypto underpinning it. If it works and it does the job that it says in the tin, then happy days.
Arnav, this is a living example for what you just asked about. It's a loyalty program company. Honestly, for the end user, they don't really care. It's just, hey, give me points, give me cashbacks or whatever. So what do we think about this company?
I would tend to agree with you. The only asterisk I'd put in there is that if you incentivize the consumer to get a higher level of cash back or to align their pockets a little bit more, then there are strong incentives for a crypto solution. Now, I'm not sure, to be very frank with you, what this company does exactly. But if we think of just loyalty in the region and just generally around the world, there's a lot of, let's say, unused loyalty or airline miles that expire at the end of the year that you haven't used. And we forget about them, or sometimes we're mad that we haven't used them. And we forget sometimes that these loyalty points at the end of the day is a form of currency, right? And currency should be able to be spent in some way and form. Of course, loyalty points have restrictions of how you can spend it, where you can spend it, at what rate you can spend it at. But if there's a crypto solution where these loyalty points, going aggregate to a token, and then you can sell that token for, let's say, capital. Look, I don't know the economics of this. I'm just kind of thinking out loud with you guys. There's definitely something there, because then you're incentivizing people to use the application more to earn more points. And if you can sell those for, let's say, cash, that's a big kind of incentive too. So look, loyalty is a very, very tough space. And I know we're going to touch on it a little bit later, but the more you can incentivize someone to use the points and use the platform to earn more loyalty, the better the loyalty solution is at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, and maybe this is a good segue to talk about Resal, Jamie.
Yeah, let's get into Resal then. So they have raised a $9 million investment. So the Saudi-based e-gifting platform, 9 million Series A, led by Dirham Ventures Fund, with participation from a range of different backers. Just name a couple: VentureSouk, their fintech fund, Nomad Holdings, etc. So it was founded back in 2016 by Fuad Al Farhan and Hatem Kamali, both sort of serial entrepreneurs. in the space. Fatima, he was one of the co-founders of Lucidia, social media monitoring platform in the region, which established back in 2015, I think. And then Fard Al-Fran, he's been involved in OnePass and as well as at Arnav. So it's sort of like a teacher upskilling platform as well. So they've sort of the product offering has expanded massively, I think, since the last time. I think they were a pre-series A back in, it was like 2019, I want to say. So it's been quite a while since I think they raised funding. That was 800K. And back then the platform was primarily enabled users to buy gifts and flowers for anyone and have it kind of delivered to your doorstep. There was an e-commerce component and that you could sell kind of digital gift cards for like Kareem, Amazon, Noon, etc. But it has massively kicked on since then. So they've over 1.5 million users. They have 1,000 different entities and organizations on site as well. So in terms of what they do, it's kind of a wide range of different digital tools, connecting merchants, companies, and individuals to manage and exchange loyalty points. They've prepaid cards, vouchers, etc. They have a Resal for merchants platform where you can create loyalty programs. You have Resal for business. You can send digital rewards and manage expenses. So it's a pretty comprehensive solution.
And Jamie, if I'm not mistaken, you go there, you buy a prepaid card and you use it to buy the stuff, and then you get the cashbacks or the points on that specific card, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Is this kind of touching on I know it's a totally different business model, Tabby and Tamara, but is it competing with them? Because the starting point is there. So instead of going to Tabby and Tamara, pay to buy now and pay later, you go to this alternative, you buy a prepaid card and you get some cash back. I don't know if they're competing for the same customers. Maybe it's not.
I can see a lot of startups who are trying to, like, I'm seeing like there are some startups who are trying to come up with these loyalty programs, and there are already some startups who are into payment gateway who are trying to expand into this loyalty program. But I don't see them really joining dots with with Tamara or with Tabby. In a way, yes, but to be honest, no, not a direct competition or
Okay.
not really.
Fair enough. I've met Fuad Al-Farhan multiple times back in the days when I was at N2V in Saudi. And I know that he's very well connected. In this round, he attracted so many family offices and angel investors, in addition to the other VC firms who joined the round. I don't know if they have already figured out loyalty. It's a very competitive market. I've seen so many companies come and go trying to solve this problem. What do you think, Arnav? Do you think this specific company has figured out a secret?
Look, I don't know too much about the company, but I would tend to agree with you that loyalty is really, it's really difficult business, right? And it's very expensive to acquire customers just generally. So what's really important is your merchant network, right? How can you acquire the best merchants at reasonable prices so that your end consumers will be incentivized to use your platform? If I'm not mistaken, this has thousands of merchants, which I think is great, right? Because each merchant adds to the whole network effect of using the application. If I'm not mistaken, they're also doing, they're not just going directly B2C, but they're going B2B or B2B2C, which I think is really interesting as well, because those business models inherently have lower CAC. Yeah, it takes a longer period of time to close those customers, but it's cheaper too over a period of time. So I think the loyalty space is interesting. We're very competitive. So you just really have to have the best loyalty platform to incentivize users to use it. I mean, you spoke about Tabby and Tamara. I mean, that's a great example of, a solution for consumers to split up their payments in different kind of payments over a period of time. And then you can add on products on top of that, whether it be e-com or loyalty, right? So if you have, an existing solution and you layer loyalty on top of that, that could be quite strong. I don't think, or me personally, personally or at Nuwa, have we backed just a general loyalty company? I think that's hard to do. But if you start layering loyalty on top of different use cases, then I think it becomes quite interesting.
I'm trying to get more insights from you two investors on how do we think about a loyalty program company? What metrics should we look at when we evaluate a loyalty program company, and what should we expect from Resal in the future, I don't know, in the next 2 to 3 years to to say, okay, they have proven their product market fit, they have done something, and now they're ready to scale to growth stage?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think loyalty is all about user acquisition, right? So user acquisition, merchant acquisition, how many monthly active users, how many weekly active users, how many people are redeeming points, how often are they redeeming points, or interacting with your application. If it's business focused, are your employees engaging with it? Are your employees happier by using your merchant network that you have? Are people staying in the business or the company more because these perks are actually impacting day-to-day employee engagement? Is it higher? So I think it all comes down to engagement, and then of course how you monetize off that engagement, right? Your contracts with the end merchants are extremely important, right? A lot of merchants today, the business has become so competitive, especially in F&B, which I think a lot of loyalty lies in. That you need to do it at scale and you need to do it profitably, and sometimes that's very hard to do. So those underlying merchant contracts are difficult. So how much are you monetizing on each spend, I think, is also very important. At what level of merchant?
Fatima, what aspects do you look at in similar companies?
There are many aspects which Arnav has really covered most of them, but something that we really saw in terms of the loyalty programs is that the users, they forget that there is an app, or they forget what is their ID, or they're not carrying it with them. So as Arnav suggested, that having something on top of it, like example, if you're using Tabby, so if you're using Tabby, then okay, you should get some sort of loyalty points, for that. So having something on top of it, a layer of it. Recently, I remember meeting two startups who are actually like working around this, like either partnering up with a bank, and then for example, I am having a bank, example FB Bank. I tap my card using the bank and I get those loyalty points. So the startup that can work around, find a loophole to work around this. So because that's honestly the main point why I feel like loyalty points are definitely like being forgotten. We don't remember, oh yes, I have the Starbucks point app, but okay, like keep tapping it all the time. So obviously, having app itself takes memory. So you don't want to like keep downloading like so many of these apps. So yeah, honestly, we are looking at someone who's really like trying to, like cut through and not be the common loyalty apps that we can see like so many who's just doing the same job. So something that's being unique and like going on top of it and like doing good and having a good number of users.
Makes sense. Okay, for our last story for today, let's move to Pakistan. What's happening out there?
Yeah, let's go to Pakistan. This particular company, they're on the march from Pakistan to Saudi Arabia, and the UAE seemingly not far after if all goes well in Saudi. So that company in question is PostEx. So they offer financial and logistics services to online merchants. This all comes off the back of a 7.3 million pre-Series A funding round that was led by Dubai headquartered Conjunction Capital, Dash Ventures, Sonable 500, to name a few. Prior to this, they'd raised 8.6 million. Some notable names in that particular, those rounds were MSA Capital, Shree Partners. So in terms of, I guess, the problem they solve related to cash on delivery, long settlement times related to those transactions. So PostEx, they solve those issues by giving merchants upfront payments against those cash on delivery orders. And they also have an attached logistics service as well. So they're growing pretty rapidly. They acquired a company in Pakistan called Call Courier back in August 2022. That really helped them accelerate the number of cities that they were operating in. Pretty much went from 3 key markets to over 650 cities in one go via that acquisition. In terms of the plans, so in the next 3 months, they're going to be entering Saudi. As I mentioned, they're also looking to raise an additional $15 million round to double down in the Saudi market. Talks for that round are ongoing at present. And then simultaneously, they're also testing the platform in the UAE, where they actually already have a license for financing. I think they're still in the process of trying to get a financing license with the local regulator in a Saudi context. But they've begun a pilot there. And as well as that, then in their own, the Pakistan context, they're also looking to increase headcount pretty rapidly there from, I think, 6,500 up to 9,000 by the end of the year. So yeah, they mean business.
I love it when startups hack their growth. Instead of just keep growing the market, they just acquired someone and it's like hundreds of cities in one go.
Turbocharged.
Yeah, exactly. This is a very competitive market as well. And they're going to Saudi, where e-commerce is a hot commodity there. There's hundreds of companies working in e-commerce, and there's e-commerce infrastructure companies and service providers like Sella and Zed and others who already started offering revenue-based financing to some of their clients. How can PostEx differentiate their services and stand out in Saudi?
I think it's a great question. I've had the pleasure of meeting Umar a couple of times over the last couple of years. Great founder. Logistics is a notoriously tough, business, and historically has had very slim margins. So you have to be, super on top of it. And by far one of the best founders, I think, to come out of Pakistan that we've had the pleasure to come across. He's done a great job in Pakistan, and as most kind of Pakistani and Egyptian companies are in the last, let's say, 12 to 24 months, they're looking to expand to Saudi. The Saudi food delivery market is really competitive, right? And it's also to some extent regulated as well, right? So he's going to face challenges there that he may have not faced in his home country. Also, the labor cost in Saudi for drivers is relatively also high compared to Pakistan. So if I'm not mistaken, I think he has a question to ask himself, which is, does he build out his own logistics infrastructure like he did in Pakistan, or does he partner, right? And you can make arguments for both. At the end of the day, the question I've always asked myself, and I've spoken to this with the founder, so I can share, is this a logistics business or is this a fintech business, right? Because it's kind of at the intersection of the two. And I think that's really cool because you don't see that many businesses that are playing in kind of two different spaces. And you ask yourself, like, how do you get around this? I think what's super interesting about the company is if they're doing logistics, or even if they're not, they're getting transaction level data on an individual e-commerce order. So think about the data they're aggregating, right? They're getting the name, the contact number, where they're ordering from, what type of product it is, how much it is, the end kind of AUV of the basket size effectively of the order, etc. So there's a lot of avenues we can go into. So I think this is a financing first business tomorrow. Maybe it's a logistics first business today, but in Saudi, there's a big opportunity. It's quite competitive, but it all comes down to, as you mentioned, your relationships with the big aggregators like Zid, Salah, the other big e-commerce players there. Shein is doing massively well in Saudi as well. So, and working capital is always a big problem for these merchants. So if you can start plugging that gap and then use that transaction level data to then further lend to them and underwrite to them, while also controlling the repayment mechanism, and that's very important, right? Because a lot of these deliveries are cash on delivery, right? So he gets the capital first. So his working capital cycle for the repayments of the loan is actually quite favorable because he's getting the money first and then paying off the end merchant. All these small things really help when you're a lending business and you also have high ops with logistics. So there is definitely space. Is it competitive? Absolutely. The biggest problem or / biggest obstacle he's going to face is that this is a capital intensive business, right? So he's going to have to get a lot of debt. And we're seeing a lot of startups come to market that are primarily looking for debt and not equity. And that's a whole different discussion. But yeah, I have high hopes for them. I think they can do quite a few things in Saudi if they get the right people in place and if they get the right distribution channel, if they get the right deadlines. But it's a tough way to get, it's a tough path to get there, but I'm sure given Umar and how resilient he is, he can figure it out.
I think your question on whether it's a fintech company or a delivery company is fantastic. Because for me, the way I see it, I agree with you. I see it's a fintech company with a springboard that is the delivery service. And I've seen, for example, there's a company in Dubai called Claim where they do something a little bit similar.
Are you talking about insurance? Working capital?
Yeah. Exactly. It's kind of similar, invoice factoring or kind of revenue type of revenue-based financing. And this takes me to this next question. There are a lot of options now for startup companies in MENA region. We know that we have angel investors and VC firms for direct equity, but we also have venture debt, we have revenue-based financing, invoice factoring, we have merchant cash advances, asset-based lending, supply chain financing, inventory financing, receivables financing. There's a lot of these, short-term debt products that companies can use for working capital. I remember when back in the days, I don't know, like 10 years ago, a company that already failed, but when they needed some working capital and there's some cash flow gaps in their books, they needed to raise equity rounds and to continue to raise equity rounds every year to solve that problem. But now we have all these options. What do you think about this new luxury that we have now in the MENA region for our startups?
Honestly, it's amazing. And something that we did need, because I remember seeing this was always an issue in terms of with startups to not just startups, like for them to, with their users itself, right, to have this kind of a payment option is what really used to hinder their working of the, like the flow of the company itself. So having startups like this is something, and definitely something, a company like this who has, already done this in Pakistan, would definitely, it's going to be interesting to see how they are going to establish the market, here.
Makes sense. Arnav, what do you think in general about the new options for companies?
Look, I think it's great, but I think there's a lot of announcements that happen, and we tend to think there's a lot of opportunities for startup to diversify their capital stack and get debt. But being very frank with you, there's a lot of demand and there's not enough supply. And actually going a level above that, if you were to ask me today, Arnav, you have a VC fund that's doing equity in MENA, and I have a debt fund doing venture debt in MENA, I would invest in that venture debt fund 10 out of 10 times. It's super attractive. The venture debt funds here are able to negotiate very strong collateral packages. They're able to get high rates, generally, and we're going into an environment now, interest rates are decreasing, so you have high rates now. You get warrants in a company. So there's not enough people that are doing debt in the region, being very frank with you. And this is to end startups. I mean, you have these kind of revenue-based financing applications and invoice factoring startups that are doing it, but to be very frank with you, they're not large enough. They need debt themselves to lend out, right? So the problem is not the startups themselves, it's a layer beyond that, which is where the startups getting capital from to lend. So there's a big opportunity there. And I'd go a step further, and I've thought about this a lot. I want to get your take on it, which is, if we look at the biggest fintechs in the region, whether it be Tamara, we look at Tabi, we have new models coming out as well with RNPL, with Keeper, Irgari, some of these others, which need a large amount of debt to lend out because these are large ticket sizes. Unfortunately, these fintechs, they have to realize till the end of the loan. And, a lot of them do end up recycling capital maybe once a year, up to 4 times a year in the case of Tabi and Tamara, but they have no ability to sell the loans off their books, right? So I also think there's an opportunity here for private investor family offices to go to some of these startups and actually buy the loans off their book. The startup, in case, will have the ability to go out, get some upfront capital. Yeah, they won't realize the full IRR of the loan, but at least they'll get a partial amount of that, but then they can recycle that capital again and again and again. So I think there's a lot of opportunities here in this region to start really doing a little bit of structuring for loans for end of venture debt, and then also to give these venture debt providers a little bit more capital to lend, because I know there's a lot of demand in the region for sure.
Yeah, I love this question. We should have you as a host, as a co-host. Arnav, I love having you. Well, honestly, I looked into revenue-based financing and invoice factoring and all of these new options. And I also looked at the SME financing, what used to be called SME financing in the region in the past. Some banks ventured into SME financing, and they did not get back the returns that they were expecting, because for the traditional SMEs, and I'll come back to startups now, but let me talk about the traditional SME financing. Margins are low. Those businesses, they're kind of hide a little bit. The success rate for these SMEs, although they're working on mature, proven business models, but there is a lot of competition for these small businesses, I would say. Now, when it comes to revenue-based financing, it's a totally different story, because we're talking about startups that are utilizing technology to increase their margins. So margins are high. We're talking about 40, 50, 60% margins. There's a problem with e-commerce though, because still margins are low in e-commerce, but in general, when we talk about technology startups, margins are high. So giving a loan to a tech startup is definitely better and different than giving a loan to SMEs. And we're seeing companies like Irad, Capify, Flow 48, who else? FlapCap in Egypt. Those are revenue-based financing companies, and we're seeing their numbers, and they're really doing a great job, and they're in a win-win situation because they bring capital to startups and they make some money for themselves and for their investors, and they all work on kind of a revenue share based with their own investors, their own debt investors. And now I'm seeing some banks getting into that. So in Dubai, there are some banks who are trying to get into revenue-based financing. Now, the big difference here is utilizing data.
Right.
Because when you're a revenue-based financing company or invoice factoring company like PostEx, you get all that data that you talked about. And you create a system, a machine learning or AI model to evaluate all of this data and evaluate the company and decide how much money do I give to this company? How much should I wait? What's the term of that loan? How much to charge them as an interest rate? So with all that data, you reduce the risk of defaulting in those loans. Add to that the warrants and the discounts you get if you convert your debt into shares in those companies. They would be afraid to give you shares because I know some companies ask for 50% discount, and I know it's not realistic, but they don't do it to actually acquire stakes in the companies. It's just a mechanism to force the founders to pay you or to pay the debt back. And I agree with you, only few companies, like less than 10 companies in the whole MENA region offer these services. And I think very similar to what happened in venture capital 10, 15 years ago, we had only 15 or 20 VC firms in the MENA region. Now we have more than 300 or 350 VC firms. And I think the same thing will happen with these new financing options. Now we have less than 10, but give it 2 or 3 years, we will have hundreds of them. Well, wrap it up for us, Jamie. Anything else?
No, after that nerd out between you two guys there, let's wrap it up. That was great.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Arnav and Fatima. This was really a great episode. Thank you so much, Jamie, for aggregating all those news for us.
Not at all. Thanks so much for hopping on, guys. Really appreciate your time.